My dad gave my stepbrother credit for my business idea at every family dinner. He had no idea I was already 3 steps ahead. I spent 2 years developing a subscription service for sustainable home cleaning products while working nights at a fulfillment center to pay my bills. My dad knew about it because I'd stupidly shared my excitement with him, showing him the business plan, the product samples, the website mock-ups I'd designed myself. He'd nod along, say it was interesting, then change the subject to talk about my stepbrother Wade, who'd just started his 3rd year of business school. My dad married Wade's mom when I was 15 and Wade was 17, and from day one it was clear who the golden child was. Wade was going to business school. I was wasting time with art before switching to marketing. Wade was building connections. I was playing around with ideas. Wade was the future CEO. I was the creative type who'd probably work for someone like Wade someday. My dad literally said that at my college graduation. When my subscription box service started getting traction, 50 subscribers in the first month, then 200, then 500, I made the mistake of mentioning it at Sunday dinner. My dad lit up and started telling everyone how Wade had come up with this brilliant idea for eco-friendly products and was teaching me about entrepreneurship. Wade just sat there smiling, nodding along, adding details about market analysis he'd supposedly done. I corrected them immediately, said it was my idea, my company, my work. My dad laughed and said I was being sensitive, that Wade had obviously inspired me with all his business knowledge and deserved some credit. Wade said he was just happy to help families succeed. My stepmom added that it was nice Wade was mentoring me. The next family dinner, my dad introduced my business to his brother as Wade's project that I was helping with. When I showed him my incorporation papers with my name on them, he said paperwork didn't mean anything. Ideas were what mattered, and Wade had been talking about sustainable business models for years. Wade would jump in with random business terms, saying things about scalability and market penetration, making it sound like he was guiding everything. This went on for months. Every milestone I hit, my dad would announce it as Wade's achievement. When I got into a local accelerator program, my dad told everyone Wade had gotten his little project accepted. When I won a pitch competition, my dad said Wade's concept had won funding. When a regional magazine did a feature on my company, my dad bought 20 copies to show off Wade's success. Wade never corrected him, just accepted the congratulations with fake humility. I tried everything to get credit. I brought contracts with my signature, photos of me at vendor meetings, and testimonials from customers thanking me personally. My dad would say I was the face of the operation, but everyone knew Wade was the brains. He'd actually tell people I was like the spokesperson, while Wade did the real work behind the scenes. Even when Wade wasn't there, my dad would say Wade was too busy with important business stuff to come to family dinners. The breaking point came when I got an opportunity to pitch to major investors. A venture capital firm had reached out after seeing my magazine feature and wanted to meet. I'd been preparing for weeks, refining my pitch deck, practicing my presentation. I made the mistake of mentioning it at dinner because I was excited. My dad immediately called Wade over and started coaching him on how to handle big investors, saying this was his chance to take the company to the next level. Wade started talking about how he'd need to review the numbers before the meeting. My stepmom said she was so proud of Wade for building something from nothing. I lost it and said Wade had nothing to do with my company. My dad got angry and said I was being ungrateful after everything Wade had taught me. He said without Wade's expertise, I'd just be another failed entrepreneur with a cute idea and no business sense. He actually forbade me from going to the investor meeting alone, saying I'd embarrass myself and ruin Wade's opportunity. That's when I realized he genuinely believed his own lies. The investor meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I didn't tell anyone else about it. But when I walked into the conference room, Wade was already there with my dad. They'd called the investors, claiming to be the business partners I'd mentioned. Wade was in a suit, holding my pitch deck, my samples spread out on the table. My dad introduced Wade as the founder and me as the operations assistant. The lead investor, Mrs. Karen, looked confused and asked for clarification on roles. Wade launched into my pitch, literally reading from my slides. But when Mrs. Karen asked specific questions about supplier relationships, manufacturing costs, and customer acquisition strategy, Wade had no answers. He started making up numbers that didn't match the pitch deck. My dad tried to jump in, saying Wade was being modest about the details. Mrs. Karen stopped him and asked me directly about the discrepancy. I explained every number, every supplier relationship, every strategic decision. I pulled out my phone and showed her emails with vendors going back 2 years, all from my email address. Mrs. Karen stopped Wade mid-sentence and turned to me directly. Her tone made it clear she knew something was wrong here. She asked me to explain the supplier relationships I'd mentioned. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my email. 2 years of threads with manufacturers appeared on the screen. Every single one came from my personal business account with my name on them. Wade went pale. He tried to interrupt, but Lucas Sanderson cut him off and asked who actually incorporated the business. I handed Mrs. Karen my incorporation documents with my signature as sole founder. The filing date showed 18 months ago, when Wade was still taking introductory business classes. My dad started to speak, but Glenn Sanderson, the senior partner, raised his hand and said they needed clarity before proceeding. Wade's whole body language shifted from confident to defensive as the investor's expressions turned from confused to skeptical. Mrs. Karen asked Wade point blank what his actual role in the company was. He stumbled through an answer about being an advisor and mentor. I interrupted and said he had zero role. He'd never attended a vendor meeting. He'd never packed a single subscription box. He didn't even know the company existed until I mentioned it at family dinner 6 months ago. My dad's face went red, and he insisted Wade helped with the business strategy, but Mrs. Karen was already closing her folder. The meeting ended abruptly with Mrs. Karen saying she'd contact me directly to reschedule without additional parties present. Wade and my dad followed me to the parking garage. My dad yelled about how I humiliated Wade and embarrassed the family in front of serious investors. I told him the only person who should be embarrassed was him for lying to investors and trying to steal credit for 2 years of my work. I got in my car and drove away while he was still shouting. Mrs. Karen called me the next morning and apologized for yesterday's confusion. She said she wanted to move forward with the investment discussion with just me. She scheduled a new meeting for the following week. She mentioned that my ability to provide detailed answers about every aspect of the business made it clear who actually built it. I felt vindicated professionally but emotionally drained from the family blow-up. I ignored 3 calls from my dad and 2 texts from my stepmom. My college friend Riker called after seeing my dad's angry Facebook post about ungrateful children who turn on family. I told him the whole story. He immediately offered to write a statement about watching me develop the business idea during our senior year, long before Wade even knew about it. His support reminded me that I had people who actually witnessed my work and believed in me, unlike my own father. 3 days later, Wade showed up at my workspace with a prepared speech about how we should present ourselves as co-founders to future investors because it looks better to have a team. I pulled out my phone and started recording the conversation. I told him he had zero claim to my company. If he continued lying about his involvement, I'd pursue legal action for fraud. He got angry and said I was destroying our family over ego. I told him he destroyed our relationship the first time he accepted credit for my work and walked away. My stepmom called and begged me to apologize to Wade and my dad. She said I was tearing the family apart over a misunderstanding about who contributed what. I asked her to explain what Wade specifically contributed. She couldn't name a single concrete thing beyond vague claims about inspiration and guidance. When I pointed out that accepting credit for someone else's work isn't inspiration, she said I was being technical and difficult. She hung up when I wouldn't agree to smooth things over. The rescheduled investor meeting went perfectly because I could finally present my actual work without interference. Mrs. Karen and her team asked detailed questions about scaling operations, customer retention strategies, and manufacturing partnerships. I answered everything confidently because I built these systems myself. They offered preliminary terms for a $200,000 investment in exchange for 15% equity. I asked for the weekend to review with my accountant before responding. My uncle, my dad's brother, called me confused. My dad told him I stole Wade's business idea and cut him out after he did all the groundwork. I sent him the incorporation documents, the magazine article with my photo and quotes and screenshots of my vendor emails dating back 2 years. He was quiet for a long time. He said he always thought my dad's stories about Wade sounded too good to be true. He was sorry he didn't question it sooner. I checked my phone 3 days later and saw a text from someone I hadn't heard from in months, a guy named Derek who'd been in Wade's business school cohort. He sent screenshots without much explanation, just wrote that he thought I should know what Wade was saying. The images loaded slowly on my screen. Wade's LinkedIn profile filled my phone display with his smiling headshot at the top, and below it a work history section that made my stomach turn. Co-founder and chief strategy officer at my company name, with dates going back 18 months and a bullet point list of responsibilities he'd never touched. Developed sustainable product line strategy and secured initial funding. Built supplier relationships and managed vendor negotiations, led investor presentations and closed Series A funding round. Every single item described work I'd done alone while he was taking exams and going to fraternity parties. Derek's next message said Wade had been talking about the company in their entrepreneurship seminar, presenting case studies about scaling a subscription business and discussing growth metrics like he had access to my actual data. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to my accountant with a message asking if her lawyer could draft a cease and desist letter. She called me back within an hour and said this was clear misrepresentation and possibly fraud if Wade was using these false credentials for job applications or networking. The letter went out the next morning via email and certified mail, demanding Wade remove all false claims about my company from LinkedIn and any other platforms within 48 hours and cease all verbal misrepresentations immediately. Wade's LinkedIn profile went blank by that evening, all mention of my company scrubbed from his work history. My phone rang at 9 p.m. with my dad's number on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. He started yelling before I could say hello, his voice so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. He said I was trying to destroy Wade's future over petty jealousy, that I'd always resented Wade's education and opportunities, that sending legal threats to family was a new low even for me. I waited until he stopped to take a breath, and then I told him Wade never had legitimate career prospects built on my work, that if he wanted to succeed, he should create something himself, instead of lying about creating mine. My dad's voice got colder, and he said I'd always been resentful of Wade's advantages, that I was using this business to finally tear him down after years of feeling inferior. I asked him what advantages Wade had beyond a father who actually believed in him. And my dad went silent for a few seconds before saying I wasn't welcome at family dinners anymore until I was ready to apologize to Wade for embarrassing him and damaging his professional reputation. I said I wouldn't apologize for protecting my own work, and he hung up without saying goodbye. Mrs. Karen's investment closed the following Tuesday after my accountant reviewed the terms and confirmed everything was standard. The wire transfer hit my business account Wednesday morning, and I stared at the number on my phone screen for a solid minute, just processing that this was real money I could actually use to grow the company. I drove to the fulfillment center that night and gave my 2 weeks' notice to my supervisor, a woman who'd watched me work the night shift for 2 years while building something on the side. She congratulated me and said she always knew I'd make something happen. Walking out of that building for the last time 2 weeks later felt like shedding weight I'd been carrying. So long I forgot it was there. Megan Tate from the Accelerator program called to congratulate me after seeing the investment announcement. She mentioned almost casually that she'd been confused at the showcase event months ago when my dad kept talking about Wade's role in the company, but she knew from working directly with me during the program that I was the actual founder and sole operator. Her comment stuck with me for days afterward. I started thinking about how many other people had witnessed my dad's lies at various events and just stayed quiet because correcting someone's proud father felt awkward or inappropriate. The magazine journalist probably knew. The pitch competition judges probably figured it out. The Accelerator mentors definitely understood. All these people saw what was happening but didn't feel comfortable saying anything, so my dad just kept going with his false version of reality, unchallenged. Taylor Richardson's email came in on a Thursday afternoon with a subject line that said potential follow-up story. She wrote that someone claiming to be my business partner had reached out asking to be included in a follow-up article about the company's growth since her original feature. She wanted to clarify the ownership structure before proceeding with any additional coverage. I called her directly instead of emailing back and explained the whole situation with Wade and my dad, how Wade had zero involvement in building the business, but my family had been crediting him for months. Taylor listened without interrupting and then said she'd make sure any future coverage clearly stated I was the sole founder. She added that this kind of credit theft happened more often than people thought, especially within families where dynamics got complicated and people made assumptions about who did what. She promised to note in her files that I was the only person authorized to speak about the company and that any future interview requests should come through me alone. The investment money let me hire actual employees instead of doing everything myself. 3 weeks after the funding closed, I brought on 2 people to help with order fulfillment and customer service, a woman named Jessica who'd worked in logistics, and a guy named Marcus who had call center experience. Training them felt strange at first, because I'd been the only person touching every part of the business for so long. But watching them pack boxes and answer customer emails while I focused on supplier negotiations and product development made me realize how much I'd been limiting growth by insisting on controlling everything myself. I could pay them fair wages with benefits, something that mattered to me after 2 years of working nights for barely above minimum wage. The business was growing faster than my original projections suggested it would. We were adding 100 new subscribers every week, and I was making decisions about expanding into new product lines without needing to ask anyone's permission or justify my choices to family members who thought they knew better. My stepmom showed up at my workspace on a Tuesday morning without calling first. I was reviewing supplier contracts when I heard the door open and looked up to see her standing there in her work clothes looking uncomfortable. She asked if we could talk privately, and I gestured to the empty office space since my employees were out on delivery runs. She sat down across from my desk and spent a long time looking at her hands before she started talking. She admitted she'd known Wade wasn't actually involved in building the business, but she'd wanted to believe her son was successful and hadn't thought it mattered who got credit as long as the family benefited overall. I felt my jaw tighten and told her it mattered to me because I'd worked nights for 2 years while Wade partied through business school, and her enabling his lies had damaged our relationship in ways that might be permanent. She looked up at me with wet eyes and said she understood why I was angry. But couldn't I see this was tearing the family apart? She asked what it would take for me to forgive Wade and restore some kind of family peace. I thought about it for maybe 10 seconds, and then told her Wade needed to publicly acknowledge he had no role in creating or building my company, and apologize for accepting credit he didn't earn. She said immediately that was too much to ask, that it would humiliate him in front of his classmates and professional contacts. I told her then we had nothing more to discuss, because I wasn't interested in protecting Wade's reputation at the expense of my own truth. She stood up and her chair scraped against the floor loud enough to make me wince. She left crying, and I sat there feeling clear about my boundaries for the first time in years, even though watching her walk out hurt in a way I hadn't expected. Riker called me that weekend and said his girlfriend wanted to meet me. She worked in marketing for a mid-sized firm downtown, and he told her about the business growth. We met for coffee on Sunday afternoon at a place near my workspace. Her name was Amy, and she asked smart questions about brand positioning and customer acquisition strategy. It felt good to discuss my work with someone who saw my actual accomplishments instead of filtering everything through Wade's fake contributions. She offered to help with a rebrand at a friend rate, said she could do logo work and packaging design for about half her normal fee because she believed in the mission. I accepted, and we spent 2 hours talking through visual identity and target market messaging. Driving home, I realized I was building a real professional network based on actual relationships and mutual respect instead of family obligation. 4 months after the investor meeting confrontation, my company hit 2,000 subscribers. A national sustainability podcast reached out asking if I'd be interested in doing an interview about building an eco-friendly business from scratch. I agreed and spent an hour on the phone with the host talking about product development and working the night shift while growing the company. I told the true story without mentioning the family situation, because that wasn't what the interview was about. My uncle texted me the next day after listening to the episode. He said he was proud of me and sorry my dad couldn't see what I'd actually accomplished. My dad's email arrived on a Wednesday evening with a subject line that just said we should talk. The message was long, and I read it twice to make sure I understood what he was actually saying. He wrote that he'd been thinking about everything that happened, and he realized he might have given Wade too much credit for the business development. But he still thought I'd overreacted by embarrassing them in front of investors and making Wade remove his LinkedIn profile. He suggested we all sit down together and figure out some kind of arrangement where Wade could have an official advisory role in the company so the family could move forward united. I read the email a third time looking for an actual apology for 2 years of crediting my work to someone else. It wasn't there. The whole message centered on protecting Wade and restoring family harmony rather than acknowledging what he'd done wrong. I closed my laptop without responding because there wasn't anything left to say to someone who still didn't understand why any of this mattered. I deleted my dad's email without responding and spent the next few weeks focused on scaling production to meet growing demand. One afternoon, while scrolling through social media during a break, I saw my stepmom's post about Wade starting a new job at a regional sales company. The photo showed him in business casual standing outside a corporate office building, looking exactly like every other recent graduate starting their first real position. The caption talked about how proud she was of his new career path and his dedication to building his future. No mention of entrepreneurship or founding anything, or my company that she'd spent months pretending he created. I felt relief more than anything else, knowing he was finally building his own work history instead of trying to claim mine. The comments were normal congratulations from family, friends, and relatives, the kind of generic support people give for standard job announcements. My uncle commented something supportive, and I noticed my dad had liked the post but hadn't added anything. Wade's LinkedIn profile now listed him as a sales associate with no reference to subscription services or sustainable products or any of the lies he'd told for months. He was starting over with his actual credentials, and while I didn't feel vindictive about his situation, I did feel like I could finally move forward without worrying about him stealing credit for my work. 6 months passed, and I settled into a routine that kept my dad and stepmom at a comfortable distance while maintaining my relationship with my uncle's family. I'd drive over to my uncle's house every few weeks for dinner, and we'd talk about normal things without the tension that came with my dad's constant need to make everything about Wade. My dad started texting me occasionally about completely neutral topics like recent sports games or weather patterns or random news articles he'd seen. I'd respond with short, polite messages that didn't invite deeper conversation or give him openings to ask about business updates. He never got invited to company events or product launches or investor meetings anymore because I'd learned that sharing my success with him just meant watching him try to redirect credit somewhere else. The relationship wasn't what I'd wanted when I first started building the company, but it was honest in a way our previous dynamic never had been. I wasn't performing for his approval or trying to prove my worth to someone who'd already decided Wade was more impressive, regardless of actual accomplishments. My stepmom stopped calling after her attempt to negotiate some kind of official role for Wade, and I didn't reach out to restart contact because there wasn't anything left to discuss with someone who thought credit theft didn't matter as long as family benefited. The company hit a major milestone when 3 regional grocery chains agreed to carry our products in their cleaning supply sections. I spent 2 months negotiating terms and setting up distribution logistics with their purchasing departments, then hired an operations manager to handle the increased fulfillment demands and a marketing coordinator to manage the retail partnerships. We celebrated hitting 5,000 subscribers at a team dinner downtown, everyone crowded around a long table talking about growth projections and upcoming product launches. I gave a short speech thanking each person for their specific contributions to our success, naming actual work they'd done and crediting real effort instead of vague inspiration or borrowed expertise. The operations manager had streamlined our packing process, the marketing coordinator had designed our retail displays, the customer service rep had maintained our high satisfaction ratings through personal attention to every complaint. Later that night, Riker raised his glass and said he was proud to see me finally getting the recognition I'd earned after years of watching my dad give it away to someone who didn't deserve it. Sitting there with people who respected my actual work, I realized I didn't need my dad's validation anymore because I had concrete proof of my own capabilities in the form of paying customers and retail partnerships and a growing team. Looking back now from my office in the expanded workspace we moved into last month, I'm running a successful company with strong investors who believed in my vision, a solid team who contributes real value every day, and thousands of customers who love the products I spent 2 years developing while working nights to pay my bills. My relationship with my dad exists in a distant but drama-free state, since I stopped trying to make him see the truth about who built what. I've built a chosen family of friends and colleagues and business partners who respect my work and celebrate my actual achievements instead of crediting them to someone more convenient. Wade is building his own career path in sales without pretending to be an entrepreneur. My stepmom has stopped calling to negotiate family peace. And I'm focused on growing the business I created rather than fighting for credit I already earned through documented work and proven results. Sometimes family doesn't celebrate your success the way you hoped they would when you first started dreaming about building something meaningful. But that doesn't make the success any less real, or the accomplishments any less valid, or the satisfaction any less meaningful. When you look around at what you actually built with your own hands and your own vision and your own stubborn refusal to let someone else take what was yours,